And I would be the first to say that if the race problem in America is to be solved, white person must treat the Negro right, not merely because the law says it, but because it's natural, because it's right, and because the Negro is his brother. So I realize that if we are to have a truly integrated society, men and women will have to rise to the majestic heights of being obedient to the unenforceable. But after saying this, let me say another thing which gives the other side, and that is that although it may be true that morality cannot be legislated, behavior can be regulated. Even though it may be true that the law cannot change the heart, it can restrain the heartless. Even though it may be true that the law cannot make a man love me, it can restrain him from lynching me, and I think that's pretty important also. And so while the law may not change the hearts of men, it can and it does change the habits of men. And when you begin to change the habits of men, pretty soon the attitudes will be changed. Pretty soon the hearts will be changed.
Welcome to the Networking with Michelle podcast, the show dedicated on providing you the how-tos of marketing and networking strategies. Here we believe in the Jim Rohn quote, success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. Thank you for tuning in to Networking with Michelle. We are doing a special episode over the next couple of days regarding perspectives of Black America. For many of us, on Monday, July 4th, we were fortunate to celebrate Independence Day. You know, the usual, we're looking forward to barbecue, plenty of food and drinks, surrounded by good family and friends. On that day, that week, Black America lost the lives of Delron Small, Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, Alva Brazil to police shootings. And those are just the names that we know because they were followed by a hashtag, video coverage, and made national news. But did you know about the 6 Latinos that were also killed by cops, including Anthony Nunes, who attempted suicide just moments before the police arrived? But I'm sure we're all familiar about the peaceful protest in Dallas that is now known as the Dallas police shooting, with 10 officers being sacrificed, 5 dead, and 5 wounded. I waited to record this in order for the fear and the anger to be removed from my voice. That way I may have an appropriate tone. But today, Sunday, July 17th, as I sit in my room, 3 police officers died in Baton Rouge, and that story is still unfolding. Oh, how quickly we have gone from Black Lives Matter, Latinos Lives Matter too, All Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, and today on Twitter, White Lives Matter. Earlier, you heard the sounds of Martin Luther King Jr., his speech titled The Other America. He states that for us to be of a truly integrated society, men and women will have to rise to the majestic heights of being obedient to the unenforceable. He goes on to say that the behavior can be regulated and the law can change the habits of men. And I believe for me, myself, common folk, my behavior and my habits have been regulated by law, government law, and biblical principle. But I'm starting to wonder who's going to regulate these officers? Who will regulate these officers? Delron Small was gunned down by an off-duty cop who was Black while sitting at the time. He was at a traffic light, and an off-duty police officer, a Black off-duty police officer, shot him in the head. Alton Sterling was in front of his friend's store selling CDs, trying to earn some money for his family, and he was shot. Philando Castile was also stopped with his fiancée and the fiancée's daughter in the car, traffic stop because of a tail light or something. He said he had a gun, he had a permit, and as he went to reach in his back pocket to get his wallet, he was shot. And his fiancée had the willpower to jump on Facebook Live and record it. Alva Brazil here in Houston, in my backyard, 12:30, middle of the night, His horse was stolen. He went out to go look for his horse. He was in the middle of the street. The cops came. They shot him. And what disturbed me the most was the fact that the police SUV wasn't even parked before Brazil was dead. What police behavior will be regulated? What is that law that upholds these officers that will allow them to change their habits? With so much chaos going on in the world today, I would be remiss as an African American woman who happens to be a small business owner, that podcast, and if I didn't use this platform to raise my voice regarding these issues. Over the next few days, you will be able to hear my conversations, interviews with colleagues and friends regarding the state of Black America from our perspective, whether it's from going back to history, education, economics, influence, community education, housing. We address all of those topics and more. I want you to bear with me because I know this is a business podcast, but I do believe these matters have to come to the surface on not just the local, national, and international scale. I bring these episodes to you with the hope that it provokes thought, that it leads you to awareness, advocacy, and most of all, action. So as we dive in, I also want you to get back to me. Anyone that follows me knows that I'm open. If you can, feel free to reach out to me via email, comments, Twitter, social media, and let me know what you think. Do we need to carry this dialogue? If so, maybe it needs its own podcast. But do we need to continue this dialogue as we go forth? But first up, the interview is with Brandon Jones, and he is a psychotherapist based out of Minneapolis. And I believe this brother, well, one, he's highly intelligent, but I believe this brother has next. And I want you to listen intently, and I want you to go to his website. I want you to go to Twitter. I want you to go to his social media and follow him because this brother has next. So listen up, Brandon Jones. Thank you. All right, Brandon Jones, I definitely want to thank you for sitting down with me today in order for us to do this interview, focusing on the Black Lives Matter movement that's going on. As we know, the week of July 4th, we lost at least 3 of our Black men due to police brutality. And you are in Minnesota, Minneapolis right now?
Yep.
And I believe Castell had his interview yesterday. His funeral yesterday.
Yeah.
And I just want to know if you can kind of introduce yourself and speak on the state of your city at this time.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. So my name is Brandon Jones, born and raised in St. Paul, Minnesota, which is here in Minnesota, we have what we call the Twin Cities. So St. Paul and Minneapolis are pretty much right next to each other. They're separated by the Mississippi River. I do a lot of work in both cities. Mr. Philando Castillo, he was from St. Paul. He's a year older than me. So we had a lot of people who were in that we know in common. I did not know him personally, but we did go to the same high school. And when he was a senior, I was a sophomore, but I do not remember him, which is very interesting. Yeah, so pretty close and pretty connected to the actual situation that happened. In fact, that night, as his girlfriend was recording it, someone who we know in common shared it, and I kind of watched a little bit of it live, but I thought it was something that happened previously and wasn't really understanding, oh, this is Facebook Live. So I was right in the middle of all of it as it was happening. So that's my connection with that incident. By profession, I am a psychotherapist with the emphasis in marriage and family therapy. I've been working in mental health since 2008, so about 8 years now. However, I've been doing therapy for the last 3 years. So that's kind of how I have been connected with that. I have specializations with the emphasis on what is called intergenerational trauma and historical trauma as it pertains to African Americans with slavery in their history. So that's kind of how I operate. For the most part, I like to consider myself kind of a Black-centered psychologist. I focus a lot on the behaviors and the conditions of African American and Africans throughout the diaspora. So that's a little bit of context for me professionally. I also do behavioral health consulting. So I work with agencies and organizations, and I provide different versions of consultation and consulting. A lot of psychoeducation groups where I go and help either work with their staff or with the people that they serve, their client, on various different things that impact trauma. And yeah, so I do that. And personally, I'm married. I've been married now for 4 years. I have a 3-year-old daughter, and I have another daughter who is 6 months. So I'm a father, a husband, a therapist, a black man, and all those good things. That's me in a nutshell.
So with your experience, well, what made you get into psychotherapy, and did you make a conscious decision to focus on the African American community?
So I kind of accidentally got into therapy. It wasn't really something that was on my mind as I was finishing undergrad. I went to the University of Minnesota. I originally went to school to be a dentist. I learned very quickly that science and math in college was not the same as science and math in high school. And being a product of a school system, I was not ready. And I actually got put on academic probation my first semester. I'm a first generation college student, so I was to death. And the only class I was doing well in was this class called People and Problems, because I knew a bunch of people with a bunch of problems. And one day after the class, I went and talked to my professor and asked her, like, I know this class is called People and Problems, but what is this? She said, this is sociology, and you're doing pretty good in this class. And if you like it, you should major in it. So I literally left that conversation and went and switched my major to sociology, and kind of just been running on this social science train ever since. And probably about 2 or 3 years after that, close to senior year, I was working at a hospital, and I was working in the cafeteria, which was great money when you're in college. It's great money working in the hospital cafeteria. They play very well. And then an opening happened in the psych ward. So I applied and I got that position. And then I worked in the psych ward for 2 years. So that was my introduction to mental health from a professional standpoint. And as I learned more, I started to learn, oh, wow, I have family members, I have friends, I have people like associates that I've been connected with that have been impacted by mental health. So I've always kind of been around it, but I've never been able to kind of put a label or a name to it until I actually started to work in it. And then that's when the light bulb kind of clicked. What made me want to be a therapist? I actually have 2 master's degrees. My first one is in community psychology. So I knew I wanted to have further education and work within communities and how community environments affect people's mental and emotional health, until I started to apply for jobs, which goes with the theme of your show, your networking, learning how do you make a living in this? And I learned very quickly that you have to have a license in mental health to really make some good money in this field. So about halfway through my first master's degree, I made a decision that I still question to this day to go back to grad school and get a second master's degree in psychotherapy. So it was all kind of trial and error and kind of bumping into things. But I believe I found my purpose. It wasn't necessarily my passion, but it was something that I felt like I needed to do. And I needed to be someone in my community that focused on these issues, and also be someone to lend a helping hand and to make a living off of doing it at the same time. So that's kind of how I got into actually doing psychotherapy.
Okay. And then I guess at what part then the concentration of African American studies, do you think it's just the natural thing because, you're a Black man with Black family? Or was there, I guess, the conscious decision to just concentrate on our community versus, I want to say, general behaviors or... Sure.
Gotcha. Well, one thing that happened to me in college, I'm going to keep referring to college because that was when I kind of gained, quote unquote, my consciousness. Okay. I was very active in things. And one thing, when I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, that was a big thing for me. And it let me know that no matter what I do, I need to be helping my people. I also was a weird kid. I was kind of a nerd and a jock at the same time. So I used to love documentaries, but I could give you random sports stats and things like that just to in as much as I could. So I've always kind of had this kind of concept, like watching things like Eyes on the Prize, things like and all these different things. So I've always had this kind of conscious context of what it means to be a Black person. And also growing up in Minnesota, where there's not a lot of Black people, you are ostracized very quickly. And you have to kind of think, okay, what does it mean for me to be a Black person? So my environment also played a huge role into me having my focus. But things took a turn for me in 2010. I met this man named Sam Simmons. Sam Simmons is a local he's a behavioral health consultant locally here in the Twin Cities, and he has this agency called Healing Brothers, and they put on a conference every year called the Black Men Healing Conference. So I got information about this, and I went to the conference, and that's when I started to learn about trauma, historical trauma, intergenerational trauma. And when I learned about trauma, that gave me a reference and a label for all this stuff that I've been noticing, but not really knowing how to categorize it. And that's when I understand my community. My community has been impacted by trauma. And that's how I started to focus more of my mental health efforts on the African American community.
So I have a confession to make.
Sure.
Feel free to, use all of your education and specialties on me and turn this into a therapy session if necessary.
Sure.
So my parents are from Cameroon, and I spent, I guess, the first 12 years living with my mom, single woman. And I have a younger brother that's 5 years younger than me. And then from the age of 12 to 17, I was with my dad in Atlanta. And when I was with my mom, we were living in Lubbock, Texas, predominantly white people.
Yep. College Station.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, it was interesting. I didn't realize there was a difference until another Black girl came into the picture, but that's a whole different story. And then at the age of 12, I moved to Atlanta, and I had never seen so many Black people in one place before.
Yep.
So that was a culture shock. And then at the age of 17, I moved to Houston and started college, University of Houston, etc. But I feel like I've always struggled with my identity.
Yes.
In the sense that I was born here. I've been to Cameroon once, but I was 8 and still young. And it was one of those things. And I still struggle with this at the age of 33. And it makes it hard for friendships and even relationships because
Absolutely.
I would go to school for, 6, 7, 8 hours a day. And I'm brought in this American culture, this Black America thing, you talk to proper. What does that mean? And then, you go home and it's like, you are an African child. And I have no idea what y'all are doing back home.
Yep.
So it's like, I've always struggled with my identity. And then now, I guess I'll say from the age of 20, even now I tell people I'm African first. And, and I get a lot, I'm not going to say it's a backlash for the lack of a better word, but it's one of those things where I never fully fitted in at school. And I'm never fully embraced by my mom's friends.
Right.
Because I didn't grow up in Cameroon. And it's been interesting. So I say this to say, pose a question, and especially in college, because you're starting to form a lot of opinions at that time. And probably not the best thing at the time, playing devil's advocate, but I would really challenge people. And I was like, what's the difference between a Black American and an African American? And I think those words have caused some friction within our community. A lot of people, well, not a lot, but there are some people, they want to be identified as a Black American. And I was like, okay. And I would say, well, I'm the true African American, because my parents are from Africa and I was born here.
That's right.
But what are some of your thoughts on that when it comes to, I guess, defining Black America / African Americans?
Yes. So I typically use the term Black. However, I'm familiar with your podcast, familiar that you have a broad audience. So I choose to use the more quote unquote political correct term of African American. And the reason why I choose to use the term Black is because we do have a lot of folks who are classified racially as Black, but however, come from various different ethnicities. Some people are first generation Africans like yourself. Some folks are second and third. Now we're starting to get second and third generation Africans as well. However, when you look at the broader scope of things, well, at least I can speak for the state of Minnesota, you're classified as Black here racially. Ethnically, it's a different thing. So one of the things that has been kind of a bigger thing here, we have a huge Somali population here. Okay. A lot of folks from East Africa are here. So Somali folks from Eritrea, what's the other country? But those are really the bigger two populations as far as quote unquote African immigrants that we have here. And there's been a lot of conflict, cultural conflict between people who are American Africans or Black Americans versus the people who have immigrated here. And a lot of the cultural conflict comes from people from the continent of Africa have an intact culture that they want to preserve, and they want to kind of assimilate, but not too much into quote unquote American culture. But they don't want folks to actually behave like Black Americans behave. Right. Because Black Americans we have this culture that across the world is kind of seen as a negative thing. It's broadcast as a negative thing. And that's through various different forms and mediums, various different forms of media that are out there. So that's one of the things that we've actually had here that's a struggle. How we classify ourselves, how we name ourselves, what we call ourselves is very difficult because we're so politically identified on such a spectrum is very hard. And I think that's one of our issues as a collective of people is that we can't even figure out how to identify ourselves. So it makes it very hard for us to organize and build and move forward because some people want to be called Black. Some people want to be called African American. Some people want to be called Moors. Some people don't want to be called anything. Some people want to be called Americans. Like it just goes on and on and on. And what we're missing is no matter what we call ourselves, the other folks outside of what we look like, they have a identity. They have a kind of quote unquote a box that they have fit in, and they're just moving forward within that box. Unfortunately, it's similar to how we have a lot of Afro Latinos. And Afro Latinos struggle to identify, okay, who am I? I hear this a lot from folks who live on the East Coast, New York. They might be Dominican and they might be darker than me, but they want to consider themselves Dominican and not necessarily consider themselves Black. So it's a struggle. I don't have the perfect answer for that. I think that Black kind of gives us this overall kind of umbrella to just say, okay, we're Black folks. We might have different ethnicities, but we're Black when it comes to racial categories, and we can move forward that way. But it's one of those things that I think, unfortunately, we're going to have to keep working on and keep trying to understand and move forward. But we've had several decades of colorism, several decades of confusion on who we are as a people. And we've changed names from Negroes to African Americans. Like we've had so much transition in our identity. We've never claimed one thing and moved forward as a collective.
Yeah, I mean, I love your answer and I totally agree. And when I was in college and I was really, honing in on these discussions, I would always mention like that's the bigger that's the bigger argument, right? It's not really the light skin versus dark skin, but it's like, right. What are we going to call ourselves as a collective?
Right.
Because, and I say this even to this day, the person that you think is white doesn't mean they're American. They can be from,
right.
Russian, Italian,
yep.
Australian. And I think we like lose sight of that as well as
right.
people in general.
Right.
So, yeah.
Can I say one more thing about that? Can I say one more thing quickly? One of the things that I try to do is help people who I consider to be Black understand the differences in ethnicities. I think that as a collective of people, we don't really recognize ethnicities very well. And especially in America, where we're conditioned to always see race and not really understand ethnicity. We can all have different ethnicities and we can have multiple languages that we speak, but we can all be considered one race. And if we look at how and especially here in Minnesota, I can speak for the data here I'm very familiar with. It doesn't matter what continent you're from. It doesn't matter what generation you are. If you're Black, if your skin is very dark, you're considered to be a Black person here. That's how the public school system identifies people. That's how the state identifies people. So we have Somali folks who they don't want to be considered to be Black Americans, but they are racially given that label. So we have to really understand ethnicity because we can all have different ethnicities. But when it comes to the category of race, we're going to be placed in one box and we don't have the power to determine if we should or should not be in that box. Unfortunately, the political power.
Do you think Black people can be racist?
I do not. No. And I don't think that because in order to be racist, you have to be in a position of power. You have to be a part of the group that's in power. I do believe that Black people can discriminate. Absolutely. I do believe that we can discriminate. However, Black people do not have enough power collectively to determine where someone should live, how someone should be educated, who someone should date, how much money someone should be allocated. Like, we don't have that type of collective power to exclude other people out. So therefore, no, I do not believe that Black people can be racist.
Okay. So, how do we get this power? What comes first, education or economic?
For me, the system has been moving for so long and has been so well defined and refined that neither one of those comes first. They have to come together. It's not a first come, first serve type of thing. All this stuff is connected. I am someone who studied the works of someone named Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and I really hope that people look up Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. He has this book called The Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. It's a really long title, but just search Neely Fuller Jr. on YouTube. That'll make it easy for people. But one of the things that he talks about is that there's 9 areas of people activity. And those 9 areas are economics, education, entertainment, labor law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And if you look at those 9 areas, people who are classified as Black are struggling in all of those 9 areas. So we can't just say one thing has to be put in front of the other. It's not that easy. I don't think it's that easy. I think that if we focus on economics, it's going to be very important because we need to have a better organized economic system as people who are classified as Black. We have to have a better economic system. Economics really does play a huge role in education. So I don't think that a bunch of people getting bachelor's degrees or associate's degrees or getting IT certifications or PhDs is going to help anything if you don't aggregate your resources, because we're going to stay where we're at now. So if we don't have really the answer is defining a more constructive culture. That's really the answer. It's not education or economics for myself. It's how do we create a better culture, a better understanding of who we are as people so that our economics is good, our education is good, the way that we portray ourselves in media is good, our politics and our political power is good, the way that we interact in relationships is healthy. That's what we really need. We need to restructure our culture.
Absolutely, especially with the relationship part. However, I want to focus on, in your city, I'm in Houston, one of the largest cities. Do y'all have like a Chinatown, Little Mexico, a Jewish community?
Yeah, we do. They're not called that. Okay. They have names. So the Jewish community is called Highland Park.
Okay.
Yeah, they have different names, but yes, we do. Yes.
Okay. So when it comes, there's always a lot of talk on how those other communities, at least those 3 other communities, they're able to circulate their dollar a lot longer than we are. From what I've heard, it can be anywhere from about 14 to 17 days, which technically is a good amount of time because most people get paid every 14 to 15 days, right?
Right.
So the money is staying in the community until your next paycheck, which, yeah. But with us, there's different reasons as to why the projects were created, reasons as to why we stay in the hood. And then you have some Black folks, they feel like when they do become educated or they start earning a little bit more money, they move into the suburbs, or maybe they're living in the heart of the city, and we're kind of spread out. Do you think that's hurting our dollar? Do you think that we have to start building smaller, tighter niche communities that will allow our dollar to circulate? Or are we on the verge of this, because of technology, this new national Black Wall Street?
Yeah, you just kind of stole my answer. I believe with the internet, and this is how I found you, as being someone who's paying attention to internet marketing, just the whole economics and economy that the internet is providing and is going to continue to provide, that is going to be a solution for some of us, not all of us, because everyone's not going to be technologically sound. Everyone's not going to have those opportunities, and every job is not connected to the internet economy just yet like that. So for some folks, it's going to be a good thing, and it will help build, quote unquote, a Black Wall Street in line. But for other folks, they're going to miss a huge opportunity. We need all of that. I think we do need communities. I live in the suburbs. You know why I live in the suburbs? Because my wife lived in the suburbs, and she's Black. And I said, hey, I've never lived in a suburb. I grew up in the hood. I'm a product of WIC, Section 8, food stamps. Like, that's what I'm a product of. And I've never lived in the suburbs. So I said, let's give it a try. I've only lived in the suburbs about a year. And I can tell you, this has been the least stressful living I've ever had, unfortunately. And it makes me feel bad to say that, but I'm not lying. Like, I can leave my car keys in the car and not be worried if my car is going to leave. Like, people don't lock their doors around here, which is, I lock my door. I don't know about these neighbors that we have around here, but they don't lock their doors. Like, it's crazy to me, just the difference. And I don't think that we should necessarily see people who live in the suburbs or live in these nice neighborhoods as a bad thing, but it's so less stressful. I work in the hood. I'm in the hood every day. I just don't live there. So I'm still there. And I know if I lived in the hood, quote unquote, in the hood, it would be a huge impact. But I've been living in the hood all my life, and I know what that comes with. And I know that I've been stressed out. So for me personally, it's not the most healthy option. As a community, I know it would be beneficial, but we have so many issues that we have to work out that it makes someone like myself very difficult for us to live in the hood, because when you live in the hood, you're living around concentrated poverty, right? Concentrated poverty breeds toxic stress. Toxic stress breeds all these problems. So when I lived in the hood, I had people next door arguing. I had folks not cutting their grass or shoveling their snow here in Minnesota. I have folks who, I don't want to sit here and give a long list of all the negative things, but that is the kind of the mentality that we have in the hood, because we don't have an invested interest in it. It's just, this is where we're at. Who cares? I'm just trying to get mine and keep it moving. And that's not helpful. So by me being one person living in the hood and me saying, okay, we need to do better, there's a lot of stress that comes with that. And I think that for folks who leave or who do choose to stay, I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that we need to focus on how do we help improve the hood? Because I do a lot of work in the hood. I donate to various different organizations that work in the hood. But for me to live there, it's not the best environment. One of the things that about Minnesota that kind of separates us from a lot of places is we hear a lot about Chicago, because Chicago is about 6 hours away from us. A lot of the Black people that live here are from Chicago, that left Chicago because of the issues that Chicago has, right? But also, a lot of the folks that come here bring those issues here. So we have kind of a baby Chicago thing going on here that doesn't get talked about a lot. So think about, the various different holidays that happen where Chicago has 84 shootings. Well, here we get about 10% of that. So we'll have about 4 shootings. And that's significant trauma that people don't like to talk about. We have communities that are in trauma all across this nation, and we have to work on de-stressing those communities, providing economic opportunities in there and helping. I know housing is one of those things. Right now, I'm not in the position to buy a house, but when I do, I have thought about moving back into the cities, in the hood. Those are the type of things we have, but we don't have enough people thinking like that or operating like that.
So just so many things on my mind right now. You mentioned, I guess, the distress situations. And if I'm not mistaken, I heard 4th of July weekend that Chicago, I think, was it 60 shootings over the weekend?
Yeah, it was a high number. It was high.
Which I know nothing about that, but to me it's crazy. But I guess
yes.
And I understand the media, they do things, manipulate things, portray things. But why do you think, at least last week, there was a number of cops versus African-American men versus, I guess, the Chicago shootings, or the Latinos. There was 4 Latinos that were shot by cops last week. Like, I don't know, like, why do you think we, for the past 4 or 5 years since Trayvon Martin, for me anyways, that there's been a white police officer versus the Black man? Yeah.
And I would extend that and say just versus Black people, because there's been tons of Black females that have been beaten, harassed, raped, murdered by the police as well. However, the thing is, when you talk about one thing that we have to keep in mind, and I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this because I'm trying to figure out this myself, is that we live in a world that is dominated by patriarchy. And the one ethnicity that their patriarchy sucks is Black folks, Black Americans. Our patriarchy is horrible. And I'm not saying that patriarchy is a good thing, but our patriarchy is so bad. Our Black male leadership is so bad that that's where a lot of the focus is, right? And there is a target agenda. I believe there's a targeted agenda for our Black patriarchy to stay suppressed because it benefits other groups. So when are being incarcerated, having low economics, have low economics, yes, that too, but low education, that benefits several different industries, nonprofits, the prison systems, all these different things. And even to one of the things that troubles me is myself. So when people are so messed up as a mental health person, that brings in more business for me. And I'm trying to work to put myself out of business. So
oh my gosh.
when I'm serious.
Yeah.
I'm serious. Think about that. Think about our dysfunction is so profitable. The media just plays a role in keeping that economic system going. It just plays a role in that. So I think there is a targeted effort, and we, by adopting our dysfunction as a part of our Black male culture, and we just keep feeding this machine, and it just keeps going over and over. And one thing we know about Western media, American media, is that we love violence, we love sensationalism. Pro wrestling is something that we love, and that's fake. We still love it. MMA just got sold for $4 billion. I mean, we love violence. All the biggest movies that come out this summer have been action films. All of them. We love violence. And what's more than race, sex, and violence all together? So when we can have Black men being murdered on live stream, when we can have Black males being blown remote bombs, that is just like a live movie. That's reality TV, snuff film movie that is being shown. I mean, this is what we're dealing with. So it gets sensationalized. So that's how I view it as, man, this stuff is hard. It's very hard for me. And I deal with people's stuff every day, Monday through Friday, sometimes on Saturdays, where I'm seeing clients, families, and I'm dealing with their tough issues. People are letting me know things about their lives and their past that they've never told anyone. So it's very hard for me to watch a video like Philandro being shot in a car. The last video that I could really watch was Tamir Rice, and that was the one where I was like, I can't do this anymore for my own mental health. I can't keep watching these films, because when I seen the cops roll up, barely stop the police car, hop out and blow that 12-year-old kid away, that hurt. That hurt me. I don't have sons. I have daughters, but that hurt me as a Black person to just see that little boy be murdered just so easily. But at the same time, if we just keep showing that video, that feeds into our entertainment. Violence has been fed into our entertainment. Aggressiveness has been fed into our entertainment. This is why we love when LeBron James dunks on somebody and screams at the crowd and looks at Steph Curry like, man, I'm gonna block it again, because that intensity just feeds us. It feeds all people, not just Black folks, white folks, Asian folks. And
the crowd goes wild.
We love that, because the crowd goes wild. We clap, and I'm a victim of that too. One of my guilty pleasures is football. I'm like chomping at the bit. I can't wait. About 5 weeks, football season's gonna be back. And it's like, it's so difficult because this is a part of our society, and it just has been to understand that we can't allow these murders, because people are dying. Like this isn't just for our entertainment. This is real life. People are being hurt. We can't sit up here and say these are a bunch of crisis actors. I've seen a lot of that stuff. We can't sit up here and say like this is all a conspiracy theory, because people are really losing their lives, and people are really being hurt, and people are also being hurt by viewing this stuff. So we are consuming so much negative energy and so much just traumatizing information that is very difficult for us all. And we have to be able to decipher between, okay, should I be consuming this? Should I watch this live stream of someone being shot? One of the things that came up that I thought was very interesting, and I've been paying attention to this, is before the I've seen several live streams of just random Black males talking, and then somebody rolls up and shoots them. I've seen like 3 of those videos. I don't know if you've seen any of those, but there's been at least 3 videos of people doing Facebook Live, just regular Black dudes, at their house or walking down the street. They're just talking about how their day's going. And then somebody rolls up and then they're getting shot in crossfire and they're dying on camera. Like there's been several of those videos. So this is something that's going to happen as technology continues to develop, which I like technology developing, because I'm a kind of a tech nerd when it comes to stuff like that. But at the same time, the realities of our lives are going to be broadcasted. And we as a community have to understand, how are we going to respond to this? How much of this are we going to consume? And is it good for our mental and emotional health? So
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
Is video and live stream the new 911? Is this, is this the revolution being, and I'm going to talk about this hopefully with my next guest, Michelle Talbert, but is this the revolution being televised via technology, social media, and not the actual, tube, the TV set? I mean, like I had a long talk with my brother. He's 28 right now, this past weekend, because he goes across the country speaking, and not every place has an Uber. And I get worried, because I'm like, if he's in a rental car and he gets lost and he makes the wrong turn, whether it's a traffic, violation or the wrong turn in the wrong neighborhood. He gets stopped. I can't jump in my car, go across town and help him and, call on my leadership community and be like, hey, we need to get the lawyers for bail and the mayor for a turn up. Like, I can't do that if he's in another city and state. And I told him, and I was like, and, he's very attractive, professional, well-groomed, guy. Mm-hmm. But I was like, Chris, like, you need to have your wallet in your cup holder.
Yep. Yeah, it's for real.
You need to have your license and insurance car, rental car paperwork on the dashboard. Like, I can't afford to lose you. And I'm just your sister.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, do we have to have our phone set to record incidents now? Like, what are we doing? Like, what do we need to do?
Yeah. What do we need to do? Yeah. I don't think that videos or live stream is the new 911, unfortunately, because when these incidents happen, no one's going to be rushing to save you. It's just documented, right? But I do think that we need to utilize this technology to protect ourselves, hoping that we survive these incidents, because we need to have that evidence to back up what we said. Since the shootings from last week, I've seen at least 2 other police incidents where people have where these documented films have come out and they have contradicted what the police report said. And I've seen 2 of those on Facebook. I seen one earlier today. I was just like, wow. So I do think that we need to have our own surveillance to back us up, because we know that this system does not allow us to tell our sides of the story. And we're going up against power and military power and the police force that they can say what they want and get away with it because they have unions, they have policies in place, they have lawyers, they have things that are backing them up where they can get away with this. Whereas civilians, we don't have those things. So if we can live stream something, I hope that utilize to help us, but that doesn't mean that it will, just because we don't have the political muscle if you are a Black person. So I do think we need to have those measures, and best believe when I get pulled over, I'm not going to say if, because I know I will. When I get pulled over, I am going to be recording that incident. Absolutely. Absolutely. Will I be live streaming it? I don't know, but I'm going to try. Wait, because another thing is you don't want to, when you get pulled over, you don't want to be wrestling around in your car either, because it looks suspicious. Yeah. So
that's true.
And I've been pulled over a lot. I haven't been pulled over in the last year. I average 2 to 3 a year. I'm surprised I haven't been pulled over since. And even think about that. Think about that stress that I have, right? I'm 30 years old. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I'm well educated. I have 3 degrees. And I get pulled over on a consistent basis, and I still have a level of anxiety when it comes to being pulled over. I know that at any moment before all these shootings were live streamed or documented and shared, or we got the video from the cops' camera or whatever, I live with this stress where I'm paying attention to where I'm at, when I have to recognize what highway I'm on or what street I'm on because I know where the cops are. That's how I drive, being very hyper vigilant. That's the type of mental and emotional health and kind of the psyche that Black people have to have just to commute from point A to point B. Like, that's stressful. That's very stressful. So to answer your question, but it is a measure that we should take to try to protect ourselves, barring that we survive the interactions with the police.
Yeah, because I know when Trayvon Martin happened, and actually when the verdict, I think it was more when the verdict came out, like that hit home for me, because I was like, I have a brother. He's always been here. But I was like, this could be my brother. And I think I was really ignorant to, I don't know if my brother has been pulled over for just being a Black guy, but it's right. I started thinking, and then now we've been having these discussions. And then more recently, over the past year and a half, it's like I feel like I'm overly concerned for my Black male friends. Like, it's one of those things where, okay, Michelle, he's either married or he's a father. But it's like, if we are hanging out, it's kind of like, dang, I do want that text to know if you got home safely.
Yeah. It's hard.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, as a Black female, you have kind of been conditioned to protect black men, unfortunately. And you grew up here, so I'm gonna, even knowing your parents are from Cameroon, you grew up in a black American culture, and black women are conditioned to protect black men's masculinity. That comes from slave tradition, by the way. So you do have this overwhelming concern to make sure that the black man can text you, or your black male friends can let you know they made it safely, because that's a part of the conditioning that you've received throughout this society, unfortunately. So I get that. I have the same concerns myself too. I was at the barbershop earlier this morning, and I noticed something different. I had got there a little early, so there was a couple people that were in and out, and everybody was saying, "Be safe, be safe." Yeah. And I've never heard one person in the barbershop be safe. It's all right, man. I'll see you later. Stay up. I'll holler at you later. Hit me up. Let's go out for drinks later. I've never heard somebody say be safe, but that's what I'm not joking. Everybody that left that barbershop in the hour and a half that I was there, they said, be safe, or I love you, bro. Yeah.
I've been saying it like a lot. I don't care if I left you at 9:00 in the morning.
Yeah. And it's funny. This was at 9:00 in the morning. This was. Be safe.
Yeah.
I was like, wow.
Yeah. It's crazy. Do you have any thoughts regarding the Dallas shooting? I'm just going to leave it general. Any thoughts regarding that?
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of confusion about the aftermath of the Dallas shooting. I feel like there's a lot of stuff that we don't know, a lot of information that has not been shared. I think that is tragic. I also think that is traumatizing for everybody involved. Innocent people shouldn't be killed for any reason. If someone's going to be killed, I think that there should be an extreme purpose behind it. I feel like anytime we have these quote unquote mass shootings, I feel like there's a lot of information that's not being shared. And I find it very difficult for one person to murder 5 people and others. That to me just kind of suspicious. I don't know what happened. I feel like how it all kind of rolled out and the information came out was very just kind of discombobulated. So I'm confused about a lot of the stuff from Dallas. I feel like the response, however, to the situation, more important for us to pay attention to, because now we've added this kind of narrative, but that we've been responding to, where it went from Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter to now Blue Lives Matter, when I thought that no one seen color. So I'm just all confused. I don't know what matters anymore. I'm just trying to say, de-stress your life and be careful and, work on your, but everybody's not getting murdered by police, and everyone's not shooting police officers either. I mean, that's just not happening on a daily basis. So, we need to be careful in these conversations that we're having and how we're having these conversations, because if we get in trying to fight for whose lives matter, nobody lives matter, because we're just being confused and we're missing the point.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very disappointed about everything. I think there's what was supposed to be a peaceful protest, and I believe was a peaceful protest led by Black people in general. I don't know who was the organizer of that. Somehow it turned very chaotic, but I don't think it was chaotic among us. It was just too much going on. And I feel my deepest prayers still go out to the gentleman that was wrongfully accused or suspected about everything. Yeah. And I'll say, at least as of this past weekend or this past Monday, the 11th, I never heard of an apology that was given to him. So I'm pretty sure at this point he probably never will receive one. I don't think, whether it's the police department, any aspect of government, local all the way up to national, I don't think they've considered how they've tarnished this man's life. And I believe these 10 officers, even the ones that passed away and the other 5 that were wounded, I do believe they were sacrificed. And I will never really know why or understand why. But I think something was set up to combat the Black Lives Matter movement. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Can I make a parallel that situation and another situation that has happened from the aftermath?
Sure.
Because you brought up a really good point. Now, I can't remember his name, but the guy that was originally accused of being the shooter but turned out not to be a shooter, his life has been threatened multiple times. He's had to relocate. He's been targeted, and he wasn't involved in any of this, which is unfortunate, which also kind of highlights the attack on Black men, because We've cleared his, quote unquote, his name was clear, but he's still under attack, right? So that attack. But there, like you said, there's been no apology from the police department, anyone in Dallas local government, or anywhere else. However, there was a football player by the name of Isaiah Correll, he's a running back for the Cleveland Browns. He posted a picture on his Instagram account that said that the picture didn't say anything. It was just a picture of a police officer getting stabbed, which I don't agree with at all. However, the Cleveland Police Department came down hard on this brother. He ended up taking the picture down, making an apology for the picture, and then he's donating his first game check, which is a total of $30,000+ to to a police association because he posted a picture on Instagram. And now that just shows you the power dynamic between black people, period, but especially black males, and this. And then I'm not even gonna, well, we could say white supremacy or the system of racism, but really just the institution of police, where they have that political power to make someone who posted a picture on Instagram not only apologize but also to donate $30,000, his first game check, because he posted a picture where on the other hand, we have a guy whose life is ruined, right? And he doesn't get anything.
Nothing.
Like stress and the trauma that black folks have to live with, where we can't even post a photo expressing anything without repercussions being handed down on us.
So speaking of trauma, this is National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month.
Mm-hmm.
Couple of things. I guess in a general perspective, why do you think it's hard for us to see a therapist?
Great question. I wrote an article on this a couple months ago. This is kind of a deeper answer to this question. One thing that I hear a lot is, because black people don't trust therapists, which is we don't. But it's kind of a multi-layered answer. One of the reasons why it's difficult for us to go to therapy or to seek out therapy treatment is, one, therapy was not designed for black people in the first place. Actually, the actual going to see a psychiatrist or therapist was originally considered for the wealthy folks, and most of those folks were white. The other folks that would get psychiatric treatment would be criminals or those that they would label as mentally insane. So they would just get tests run on them. But if you had money, that's why you would be able to go to therapy. But what ended up happening as we move into the 80s and the 90s, it became a profession and insurance companies got involved. So folks could start to actually access therapy through their insurance companies. And one of the barriers that we know in the African American or in the black community is that we don't necessarily have insurance or good insurance. So a lot of people do not access mental health treatment or therapy because they don't have the insurance to do so there as well. So one, it was not necessarily created for us. Two, we don't have the financial ability because a lot of black folks don't have the money. Therapy can be expensive. There are a lot of agencies that give you free therapy or reduced or sliding fee scale, but it can be expensive. The next level to this is that folks don't necessarily, we get our healing and our therapeutic treatment from other places. Some of those places are more destructive than, so a lot of folks, they deal with their issues by smoking cigarettes, drinking alcohol, having sex, eating. And some folks, they'll go to religion. So I'll go to church twice a week and that makes me feel good. I don't need a therapist. I'm going to pray on this and that's it. Some people, they go to grandma or talk to a trusted family member and then they're good. Like, this is what we do. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. If you have someone in your family that's going to give you a therapeutic outlet and help you, manage your stuff a little bit better, that's awesome. But everybody doesn't necessarily have. So that's another thing. We've sought out other places to get our mental health kind of handled or worked on. And then the part that I work on is that we don't have enough therapists that understand the context of what African Americans go through. So we don't, and that doesn't, and I say that we don't have enough black therapists, period. But we also don't have enough people that actually understand the context of what it is to be a black person in this world. So how can you help me when you are a 35-year-old white female who grew up in the suburbs and her only interactions were a few athletes at her college? Like, you're not going to help me. You can't help me.
Okay. So, I've gone to therapy for several years, off and on, for several different reasons. But I'll say the last couple of reasons was when I was in my mid to late 20s after a couple of bad relationships. And this was my conscious decision. I specifically told myself, I said, I do not want a Black therapist because I don't want anybody telling me about the Bible. I know the Bible. I go to church. Let me say I read the Bible. I go to church. I didn't want to have none of that coming into my therapy session. And I specifically sought out a white, I guess you could say a white female. And love her to death, great connection. And I guess I got lucky because it worked. So that's one thing. The second thing is I'm very open. You know, I got a therapist, see my therapist. And people be like, what's wrong with you? Ain't nothing wrong with me. You know, and trust me, I've grown. But I used to tell, like, especially women, my friends, I'd be like, look, can't be listening to all your homegirls all the time. Like,
Yep.
You can't be listening to your friends. You need to go get some professional help, especially when it comes to these relationships.
Yeah.
And I advised a friend a couple of weeks ago. I was like, maybe have you considered seeing a therapist? And she was like, ain't shit wrong with me. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yep. Yep.
I was like, all right. And we've been friends for a very long time. And, it's like, I see the cycle. I see something.
Yeah.
And, and I'm going to try to be a good friend and discuss it. But I think sometimes you have to try something new. You have to step outside of the box, the comfort zone.
I agree.
All those things.
And that's you mentioned a great point. That's another reason why we don't access therapy is because we see that as something for quote unquote crazy people. And that's not necessarily like us, who all they need is 4 sessions to settle whatever issue that they have. And you don't have to be quote unquote crazy to seek out therapy.
So I want to kind of round up a little bit, whether it's education, the financial aspect, how do you conduct yourself with officers or people in authority, as well as the therapy aspect. I see a lot of us, I'm going to say young professionals, millennials, we're having these conversations, right? We're having these events where we're going to discuss, what are we going to do? What's the game plan? We need to strategize. Where's the action? And I'm starting to wonder, when it comes to these formalized trainings on how to conduct yourself, when is it okay to see a therapist and things of that nature? Does it start in your 20s, or at least when you're in college, you're an adult, you're a professional? Or do we really have to have these conversations with kids that are 7, 8, 9, maybe 13, 14, 15? Like, when's a good time to have discussions with these tough topics?
Yeah. For therapy, I think it's when things are becoming out of the parents' control, like they can't deal with it. I think that's a good time to introduce therapy to younger children, or if they ask for it. I've had some young people as young as 12 say, I need some help. Let me go find somebody to talk to. So when they're asking for it, therapy only works if you want to work it. And I have a lot of parents that have brought, their children. I had a lot of people bring their spouse to therapy and they did not want to do it. And it kind of made things go worse than they already were going. So it's part of my answer is when people are ready for it. But some people don't know when they're actually ready for it. That's one of the kind of the difficult pieces of it, is we don't know when we should actually access it. I believe that if you are a person of color and you live in a quote unquote first world society, you need some type of therapeutic intervention, because we deal with a lot of trauma. We deal with a lot of stress just being who we are on a daily basis, that we need to work on our issues. So it's very difficult to say when a good time is. If you're someone who's been sexted, or you've experienced domestic violence, or you've had some significant adverse childhood experience, the sooner the better for therapy. Because one of the things that I fear is that people get triggered, and then them being triggered by whatever traumatic experience they've had to other issues down the line. So it kind of depends on where people are at. And I think that the answer is different for different people.
I listen to, a lot of podcasts, which falls into the online marketing space. And a lot of people they say the first thing for you to do to become successful, to earn money, is change your mindset. And something you said earlier, when we started was, I'm paraphrasing, but pretty much, with 400 years of slavery on our back and all of this oppression. And what do you think are some of the tips we can do as Black people to change our mindset to find some type of success? Because I believe success is really on how you define it to your personal standards. But what do you think are some of the things that Black people can do to change their mindset?
Yep. Funny you should ask. I am finishing up an audiobook right now on that called Level Up, Personal Revolution for Self-Improvement. And self-improvement is survival education for legacy and future. So I'm working on this right now. And I think that just some quick things that we could do to kind of get our mindset ready is an acronym that I call the ABCs of resiliency. And A is A is for adaptive awareness, which is really just saying being honest about the situation that you're in and the context in which you live. One of the things that we struggle with is being honest that we live depression, that we need help, and that it's okay to heal. And that's a big thing, is just coming to that level of just awareness that, what we live in is messed up. B is for balance and boundaries. Our time and our energy, balancing our logic and our emotions, balancing our relationships, setting up boundaries. What are our likes? What are our dislikes? What are things that work for us? What are things that don't? Like, we really need to set up balance and boundaries, which is very hard for us because we are especially when we have invested a lot into something, and it's very difficult for us to kind of separate ourselves from things that might not be good for us. So B is for balance and boundaries. And then C is for consistent, constructive choices. So doing the best thing for ourselves on a consistent basis. Consistency is key. You study a lot of internet marketing. So do I. Things that they talk about is being consistent. Gary Vaynerchuk, he talks about being consistent, work ethic, right, dirt, doing hard work. This is important for our mental health as well, because we'll do something, we'll feel good for a week. And then next thing you know, reality sets back in and we're back to doing the same dysfunctional stuff. It's like when you go to a concert, you go see Beyonce, you feeling good. And then you go see Beyonce on Saturday, you're feeling good till Thursday, and then you're mad all of a sudden the next weekend again. It's like, you have to make sure we stay consistent. Consistency is key. So BC's adaptive awareness, which is the key to that, is to be honest. B is for balance and boundaries. That's to our emotions, to our activities, the things that we do. And then C is constructive choices.
I love it. Do you have that on your website, or it's going to be in the upcoming book?
It's going to be in the audiobook. The audiobook will be for free, and it will be available now. It'll be available now. Yes.
Oh, awesome. Okay. So before we wrap up, Brandon, one, I just want to acknowledge you. I really do appreciate you for, one, not being hesitant to reach out to me several months ago. So I really appreciate the friendship we're developing through the podcast and online. But more importantly, just your contribution, your service that you're providing within your community that's expanding to a national level. I really believe you got next.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You got it. You're that leader, that influencer. You have the voice that our community needs right now, and I look forward to following your success. So
thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, you're absolutely welcome. On that note, I know we're definitely going to link up a few things that you mentioned, but where can people find you at?
Before I give my contact, I forgot to ask me your question that you ask everybody. How you going to do me like that? How do you define success, right?
How do you define success? Go ahead. Go ahead.
You're going to play me. That's messed up. I'm hurt. No, I define success as being able to manage control your time, and to be able to make a constructive impact on those around you. And I credit you because you made me think of, how do I define success? I talked about it a lot, but when I started listening to your podcast, I'd never had a definition. So I'm making that. You almost got away with it, but you didn't.
Wow. Because I'm changing the direction of the podcast, and I'm actually going to do less interviews. But when these incidents happened last week, and I really, it's like, you know what, Michelle, you are not CNN, you are not BET, but the little platform you do have, you have to do something, right?
Yes.
And like this conversation, what I'm trying to put together with these few interviews, Black Lives Matter, whatever. Like, this is the greatest part of the labor of love, right? Because
Right.
I don't know, I've just been so emotional during this conversation because, the reason why I started it is because it's like on the business side, like, how can I grow, right? But I can't grow if I'm not acknowledging some of these social issues that my community is
Right.
going through as a collective. And
Right.
it's tough, right? But I've just learned so much from you because I have one of my friends that I love dearly who's Black, but she's trying to argue me down about protesting and putting your money in the bank, and some of these interviews are selfish because I love them, I love to learn, but at the same time, I definitely want to have that platform that I can bring people in, such as yourself, highly intelligent, knowledgeable, eloquent, and can communicate their expertise, to the general public. And success is different. It's just, I've been trying to do this business thing going on 3 years, and I'm pretty sure I'm redefining success every week.
Yep. Yeah. And success is contextual. It depends on what you're trying to succeed in.
Yeah. And the main thing is
yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's funny because what I hear you're saying is something that I've been developing this concept of, because in this internet marketing world, in this online business world, we talk a lot about find your passion, do your passion. And your passion was networking business and getting people to come together and build off of networks. But it sounds like you're moving into your purpose. And I am somebody who's like, do your purpose. I'm passionate about Chipotle, but I'm not about to go open up 4 Chipotle stores. I love some Chipotle. Okay. But my purpose is helping my people out of the messed up condition that we're in. Yeah. And that's what drives me. So I get it. I what you just said, just like lit a light bulb for me too. So I appreciate you as well.
Yeah. Cause I have a finance degree and banking experience that I was like, that's in a past life. And I've always been, I'm a capitalist. Entrepreneurship is the way. And I don't know what it is. We have Unity Bank here in Houston, Texas, Black-owned bank. And I used to go to school right down the street from this bank. And I was like, you know what, Michelle? You can't be talking about capitalism and entrepreneurship if your money is not up in a Black-owned bank, which is, to me, the foundation of the Black economy. And
absolutely.
But at the same time, I'm 33. I'm not 23 anymore. I'm 33. So I got a little bit more sense.
Right. Exactly.
Oh, one more thing, because I was listening to your blab.
Yeah.
You say you did a documentary back in the day.
Yeah.
Do you want us to link that up, or you want to talk about it?
Sure. I can share those. I've made 3 films. They're all because they're old. So I don't like to talk too much about them. And a lot of my mentality and philosophies have changed since then too. But I still think that they're good works for people to sit and watch and analyze. My first documentary is called In the Mix, and it's a look at multiracial identity. I did that back in 2008, and you can find that on YouTube if you search In the Mix. My second documentary was called The Mother Load, and that focuses on single motherhood, where I pretty much interviewed or talked to 3 different single mothers and just kind of talked about their experience. And that can be found, I think I put it on YouTube. See, this is why I'll talk about them, because I just left them in the past. I know it's on Vimeo for sure. So if you type in The Mother Load on Vimeo, you can find that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put all this stuff on my website. So you'll find that on my website. The third film I did was for a small charter Latinos here in the Twin Cities, and that was called Partnership Academy. And it just talks about how do you develop a community school and what a community school looks like and how does it work. So those are the 3 films I worked on. I have a couple of other ideas that I'm kind of putting together now. One of them being on sex trafficking and sexual trauma of Black females. And if everything works out, I'll be putting that movie by the end of 2017. So I'm into film. I'm going to be starting a YouTube channel here very soon, but my energy has been in the audiobook and working on my first book that I plan to publish called A Generation Genius, which focuses on how do we get Black children to a level of success.
Oh, I love it. All right. We're going to have all of this linked up in the show notes. That way people can find you? And what is the best way to contact you via your social media and websites?
Yep. So on all social media platforms, if you put in Universal Jones, you can find me. Everything except for LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I'm just Brandon Jones, and good luck finding me because there's a ton of Brandon Joneses.
And your website?
Twitter, you can search. My website is www.jegnainstitute.com. Jegna is spelled Jegna, Institute, INSTITUTE.com. If you type in Jegna in Google, you should be able to find me very easily.
Well, Brandon, I definitely want to thank you for networking with Michelle. I want everyone to remember a personal connection leads to an influential network.